You're listening to today's inspirational message on the Proverbs with Kurt Bjorklund.
Proverbs 25 gives us wisdom around the area of our relationships. But one of the unexpected parts of this chapter, if it really is about relationships, is that it speaks about the need for restraint or self-control. Verse 16 says this, "If you have found honey, eat only enough for you, lest you have your fill of it and vomit it. Let your foot seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he have his fill of you and hate you." And so there, right away here talks about this idea of overindulgence, about your consumption in your company. You've probably heard the phrase that fish and company stink after 3 days. This is, in a sense, the proverbial version of it. Don't go into your neighbor's house too often. Don't overindulge, because that will not be positive. And then it says that about eating. But if you come to the end of the chapter, verse 28, it says, "A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls." Tim Keller writes about this. He says this, "Without a wall, the residents of ancient cities were vulnerable to attacks by bands of robbers and other nations' armies and even animals. A person who lacks self-control is just as defenseless. If you can't control your appetite for food, you will ruin your body. If you can't control your tongue or temper, you will say things that can't be unsaid or taken back. If you can't control your sexual desires, you will ruin your relationships. If you are impulsive and imprudent, not thinking things out, you'll make rash decisions. If you can't say no to people, you will overpromise and either be exhausted or overextended or have a life filled with disillusioned people and broken relationships. A city doesn't have to be completely without a wall in order to be sacked. The wall just needs to be broken through at one point to let an enemy in. So a lack of self-control in even just one area of life is a life-threatening problem. And when we look at Proverbs 25, this self-control, we see that we need it, especially when we want to get even. Verse 21, "If your enemy is hungry, give him something to eat. If he's thirsty, give him water to drink, for you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you." A lot of times what we want to do and where we need self-control is when we want to get even. We also see it when we want to just simply get by. Verse 26, "Like a muddied spring or a polluted fountain is a righteous man who gives way before the wicked." The reason a righteous person gives way before the wicked is because they just want to get along, get by with the crowd. And so they'll sometimes compromise values, and that is a lack of self-control. And then when we want to get ahead, it's not good to eat much honey. There's the honey theme again. Nor is it glorious to seek one's own glory. So getting ahead is the overindulgence and the idea of saying, if I can have more of something. And the reason this impacts our relationships, self-control impacts our relationships so much, is our lack of self-control in an area of our lives can have a negative impact on people in our lives. I remember years and years ago meeting with a family, and this was not in Pittsburgh, and the man had a drinking challenge. He drank too much. He knew he drank too much, but he continued to believe that his actions did not impact his family, that he only drank when the kids were in bed. He only drank, but it wasn't just that he drank. It was all of the things that he wasn't doing when he would drink. Mostly when the kids would go to bed, he would start to drink, and then he would just ignore his relationship with his wife. His lack of self-control in one area created relational turmoil in another. And so the question today, in a very simple way, is just, where do you lack self-control in your life right now? What area of your life is creating a vulnerability for your relationships and your well-being that you've been ignoring, or you have simply been explaining away, even though down deep you know that there's an issue that needs to be addressed?
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.